this apparently sends signals. So grab it here, and anybody that's worked with a mic knows that you have to eat it. It doesn't work to hold it down here. You really, yeah, I think that's best. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. On behalf of the Human Development Council and Civic Tech St. John, welcome. And thank you to the candidates for participating and to all of you for taking the time to engage in this important civic conversation. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're gathering on the traditional unceded territory of the Wolastoqey and Mi'kmaq peoples. The Woolastoq, the river that connects this region to a much broader homeland, has been a place of life, travel, and community for thousands of years and remains central to that identity today. As we come together this evening, we recognize that the issues we're discussing, community, housing, and well-being, are experienced differently across communities, including Indigenous communities. I'll just get this a bit closer. That's a very subtle reminder. Thank you, John. That's good. Okay. Tonight's forum is intended to provide a respectful, nonpartisan space for candidates to share their perspectives. Neither the Human Development Council nor Civic Tech St. John endorses candidates. Candidates are seated alphabetically. They'll have about a minute and a half to respond to questions. I may ask follow-ups or invite additional perspectives, and I'll try to do my best to ensure everyone has a fair opportunity. If time permits, we may have an opportunity for some questions for the floor, but we typically use curated questions that we have received from a survey that has gone out to members of the public. Some of you on lucky seats have received, we'll see a little note with a QR code, and we would encourage you, if you haven't already completed the survey, to do so. We'll be taking surveys right up till Election Day, curating them, and getting a sense of the priorities that residents and voters have. We'll start with a brief introduction. If we could start, Mr. Como here, tell us a bit about yourself, why you're running, and one issue you would focus on first if elected. There you go. I don't know, is that on?
Yes.
You got it.
Good evening. Thanks for the council for hosting. Thanks for everybody for being here. And for those who are tuning in on YouTube, we appreciate it. Appreciate all the questions that you have submitted. My name is Phil Como. I am running for Ward 4 councillor, as you all know. Grew up in St. John. Sarah and I raised our daughters here in East St. John. Three of them have moved on to other provinces, one still here, and I've got a couple of granddaughters. In fact, I have 4 daughters and 3 granddaughters, if you understand that. Yeah. I've been a paramedic for about 33 years, so with that, I've been the president of the Paramedic Association of New Brunswick for 10, on the board for 20, and the chair of the Paramedic Association of Canada for 6 years. So that's a little bit of experience that I bring to the table. So I'm not just a boots on the ground paramedic. But saying boots on the ground paramedic, I've been in your homes, I've been on your streets, I've been in your neighborhoods. I see the concerns, I hear the concerns, I live the concerns, and I'm getting time's up already. Oh my goodness. We'll carry on later.
Good evening, folks, and again, thanks to all of you for being here. My name is Paul Dempsey, and I bring 36 years of public service to my candidacy for councillor for Ward 4 East St. John. I served Canada, our country, as a naval officer and then as a senior diplomat. In those capacities, I had the opportunity to lead small groups of men and large organizations up to 3,500 people. As a captain of a warship and as the deputy commander and the interim commander of Canada's Pacific Fleet, I had the opportunity to deal with complex operational and administrative issues with results. And it's that I want to bring to St. John, is results. I want to bring results to our city when it comes to economic development. That is my primary concern if I get elected. I believe that if we have a strong economy in St. John, we will have the revenue to do the things that we need to do to fix our roads, to fix our infrastructure, to give support to the social services that we so desperately need to do, especially for the homeless. We can create jobs. You give a man or a lady a job, that's how you lift them up. So I want to see more jobs and better paying jobs for the citizens of St. John. Thank you.
Hi folks, my name is Dave Merrithew. I'm also running here in Ward 4. A little bit about myself. I'm running because I've always been involved with my community, always wanted to get involved with my community. I've done some fundraising for Rotary and for the Teen Resource Center, where I raised $400,000 a few years back. I was on the board of the Boys and Girls Club with a good friend, Kathy Rignanessi, and I raised $1 million for the Boys and Girls Club a few years back. I'm on the board of the St. John Nonprofit, and just this morning when I donate, I try to do, do things, I do it well. Just this morning, I donated my 786th time giving plasma. A little bit about myself. My experience, I've 42 years. I built, I ran, and then I sold a successful business. I've been on this council before, 9 years. I have experience. When I was there, I put policies in that help to reduce your debt, to lower your taxes, and to put reserve funds, saving accounts, for the citizen St. John. That will be my focus this time. My focus has to be fiscal responsibility. You watch the dollars and cents, and they will take care of us. Thank you.
Hello, bonjour, hola, assalamu alaikum, ni hao, namaste. My name is Paula Rodwan, and today I'm wearing black pants with a black top with white flowers and a fuchsia pink headscarf, and I am not part of the disability community, yet I have a lot of friends that are. And I've done a lot since being on council. I'm very proud of all of the hard work that I've done. I've worked full-time. A lot of the time this is considered a part-time job, but it really does have full-time demands. Randy had asked, though, what was the first thing that I would want to do if re-elected, and the first thing that council does is a set council priorities. It's hard to pick one thing. There will be many things that I would be pushing through council priorities. One of the things when it comes to Ward 4 is I do think that we really need an East Side plan. One thing that I pushed for was to have a community development officer in place for the East Side. That was something that took a little while to get in place, but you know, if you think about it, the North End has 5 people working on this, and now we have 1. So I think we need a plan for investments coming into the city, and the second big thing that I will continue to push, we're right in the expansion of the field house with community space involved in that. Thank you.
We'll begin with some issues we're hearing across the city, concerns that are shaping the daily lives of many residents: housing, homelessness, affordability, and access to services continue to come up consistently, and we'll start there. The first question is on homelessness. We're seeing increasing pressure, encampments, demands for services, and questions about what happens next. The city has adopted an approach that includes outreach, supported sites, and a housing-first focus. The question is, in your view, what should the city be focusing on right now, and what would you strengthen or adjust?
Oh, thank you, Randy. In my view, the most important thing for the homelessness is housing first. You have to pick people off the street and put them in a house. once they're in a house, then you can begin to do the other requirements that they need so desperately, whether they need support for drug addictions, mental health, whether they need life training skills or employment skills. It all has to start with housing first. You put them in there. I do recognize that some people need help even before they get into the houses, so we need those emergency shelters, those warming stations. It's critical, though, after that, that we get the transition houses going on. And what we see going on now with the 12 neighbors and that approach, I think is an excellent start, but we have to build on that. I think having larger groups of 20 and 30 might be at times too much for people to get the individual help they need. So I would like more of a micro model where you have maybe 6 or 8 people that need the help in a concentrated area, and then you have the wraparound services that come to them, so you have this distribution of people that need help across the city and not concentrated necessarily in one spot as we now see uptown. So again, just to push the issue around the city to get all communities involved and to have those micro centers with the wraparound services. Thank you.
First of all, let me say that according to Marcel LeBlanc, and I think everyone he is, St. John has been on the forefront of what they've done with homelessness, and I want to congratulate the city for the tiny home communities we put up, the red, green, yellow zones that we put up, and the enhanced security. I think we're going in the right direction. I do believe we need some more tiny home communities, but I think they won't survive, they won't do well without some wraparound services. I believe you need the services, addiction services, mental health services, employment services, education services. Without those, I don't think we're going in the right direction. In my humble opinion, these homes should be temporary. Our goal should be, and I'll use the word graduate, our goal should be to graduate these folks into traditional permanent housing. The other thing I'd like to see is that, and Randy, this is a great job for HDC. We've got so many agencies at work doing whatever they do that I'm not sure anyone knows the answer to what they all do. So I'd like to know what they do, who funds them, is there overlap, and can we see more efficiencies? So I also like to see the agencies that we, the citizens, the city of St. John, pay. I'd like to see regular metrics presented to staff and or council. You know, the homeless question has to be solution oriented, and that's what I'd like to do. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So I just want to take everybody back for a second to 2021 when the last election happened. You didn't have one person talking about homelessness, and there's a reason for that. They were talking about the housing crisis, but not homelessness. There was not one tent visible in St. John at that time. I want you to keep that in your mind. What happened soon after that was quite a shock. And it was a shock nationwide, and you know, frankly speaking, we just started advocating to the province as that is provincial territory, 100%, and we were getting shelter beds at council. And then the pressure was on, and one more person, another person, and a tent fire, and wow, the crisis was just among us. And so council really needed to try to figure out something. If there was only shelter beds coming up, what else were we gonna do? So hence the green, yellow, and red zones. We ended up getting $3.4 million from the federal government because we had a Housing for All strategy. And now I think we need to go beyond that. That is a step. There are affordable units that are going to come available this year. 99 King has some. Also, there's some on Broad. There's some on Cliff Street. So there are going to be people graduating, David, right? So then the other thing is we need to get at some systemic issues so that we can start supporting, so that we get more inclusionary zoning through maybe lowering development charges, you know, giving incentives to have more affordable, you know, units available for people. I guess my time is up, but I can continue later.
Thank you. Homelessness, not an easy answer, or else we'd already have it solved. I see this all the time. As you know, I'm a full-time paramedic, so I see the tents, I see the shelters, I go into them every day, every shift. What can the city do about this? Well, we can continue to improve the sheltered living with the tiny homes. I think that's a huge start. We've got to get them off the street. Not only getting them off the street, let's give them a purpose once we get them into these tiny homes. Let's get them to work. Let's give them a living wage. Nobody left behind. These people they want a purpose in life, and let's get them off the street. Let's get them to work, and keep in mind, we've lost 39 homeless people last year. 39 from weather, from medical issues, from drug addiction, from all kinds of things. 39. So let's keep going. As a city, we need to increase our green zones, push the provincial and federal governments to help out. Again, this is not a municipal problem. It's a country problem. It's a around the world problem, and we need to do this together. And it's not a simple little answer, or else we'd already have it fixed. Thank you.
We're hearing from residents here and across the city that poverty and cost of living pressures are real concerns for many households. Much of the day-to-day response to these pressures is carried out by community organizations, shelters, food banks, harm reduction services, youth serving agencies, and community centers and community space like this one. In your view, is the city doing enough to support that work? And if not, what would you change?
Thank you. I don't believe it's always the city's responsibility to move into some of these areas that you'd mentioned. I want as much help as we can, but I think community has to lift up itself when it goes to food banks. When a community helps itself, I think we're stronger at it. We can't always fall back onto the purse of the city of St. John. If you want to do that, the council votes in favor of that, then you've got to take it, from one pocket to another. So what I'd like to see with all of these different areas you just mentioned is that more community involvement. I've seen it here, I've seen it in Forest Hills, I've seen it in Champlain Heights, I've seen the community rise up, I've seen it in Lattimore Lake recently. That community is rising up and taking care of its own, and that's where I think it should be ground roots gestation. That's where I think the best bang for your buck is. When you take care of your neighbor, I think it comes from the heart, and that's where I'd like to see it start from.
Randy, can I bother you to repeat the question?
Sure. In your view, is the city doing enough to support that work by community nonprofits and those services to those that are being left behind? Is the city doing enough to support the work? And if not, what would you change?
Yeah, thank you for that. I apologize for asking that. The city has been doing a lot, and the city also gives community grants. We've recently changed the way that we give community grants, and I was a little on the fence about it, I'll be honest, because I knew when we were changing these grants to support the organizations that support city initiatives, that we would be leaving some organizations out that I love that do more things that are in the line of provincial issues like addictions, mental health services. So I think, yes, we are but we were actually denying a lot of people for community grants. So this way, it's a little bit of a better way to be assured that we're going to be saying yes to a lot of the people that are asking. One of the things that I think that the city does need to do, though, is do a little pilot project. I'd like to see, I think it would end up helping us save money in the end. I'd like to see us do some sort of funding, and it could be empowering that community grants program to try to push, and there's already some initiatives out there, but prevention for homelessness, right? So how do you prevent people from being unhoused? Some courses, for example, for budgeting, for helping people to find housing. There are supports out there now, but I think that they struggle. And so I'd like to see a little bit more of a push that way to do some preventative things. This would help some of those systemic barriers that are in our society. And so that's one idea that I have. The other thing is I really do think that there is probably opportunity for a lot of in-kind supports. So I'd like to see the city get together with a bunch of not-for-profits and see where can we allow space in some of our organizations that we have on for land, for example, for them to use for space in our community centers or what have you.
Thank you. Is the city doing enough? That's sort of a yes and no question. Yes, they are helping. Can they do more? Absolutely. How can they do more? Communicating with the nonprofits more, being accessible 24 hours a day, so if somebody comes in looking for help, the city can point them into those nonprofit places to go. What else can the city do? We have at our discretion a bunch of political ministers in our city. Why are we not working with those ministers from the provincial and the federal government? Why are we not pushing those guys a little bit harder to fund these kinds of things? What has happened is, yeah, we always say housing and homelessness is a product of the provincial government, but it's been pushed down to the municipal level. And we only have so much in the pot. So let's tap into those provincial and federal governments, especially with all the ministers we have in our city. We should be communicating with those guys and girls and really pushing for that. So I would say the city is doing an okay job. Can we do more? Absolutely.
In my view, I think the city's doing what it should be doing in terms of supporting nonprofit and community organizations. It's finding that balance between using the taxpayers' money and using it smartly to help those who most need it. What the city can do, I think, better is supporting the construction or the development of housing. As I said previously, the first step is putting everyone under a roof, giving them a house. We have a lot of city land in this in St. John, and I believe we can work alongside nonprofit and private organizations who put people first. So if we put people first, we can build homes cheaper. We have also lots of vacant property or property in our city that is being unused. Gaining that property back and developing is a cheaper way than building from new. So I think the city could put more focus on building more homes quicker, taking down the red tape, and prioritizing projects that center on housing the homeless. So it's putting priority first, cutting the red tape, working with nonprofit organizations and private companies who put people first and not profit.
Let's probe this a little deeper. We're hearing that cost of living pressures, housing, food, transportation, and everyday expenses are affecting many households. Within the role of municipal government, what is one practical step you would take to reduce that pressure?
Thank you, Randy. You just made this easy for me, I hope. As long as we stay on the right track, there will be affordability measures coming to you. So luckily, because the last council put a whole bunch of financial policies in place, and we continued with that, and we stuck with it, and staff kept reminding us, council, don't go and spend too much. You're going to end up, not being able to be responsible, and they would keep us in line if anybody wanted to invest more. But, we went ahead and lowered the tax rate by 25 cents in 5 years. There is a plan that was put out today. You could watch back the finance meeting today, that we're going to end up having about a $10 million relief come in 2028, which is basically the pension payments. And if everything goes well and if the plan goes in place, then we will end up lowering the tax rate by another 6 cents. And, we'll end up lowering debt as well, which also will end up lowering interest, obviously. So, and I'd like to say that I'd like to see the same sort of thing happen if we do finally get tax reform, which Susan Holt herself said, who's now premier, but at the time she was in council chambers, promised tax reform. And if they do allow the heavy industrial tax to stay in St. John, that would be over $9 million more. I would like to see us do the exact same thing with that. 6 cents down on your tax rate again, because we're not competitive with Moncton and Fredericton and Quispam and Rothesay, and we need to get there, and that's how we do it. We drive down the tax rate so your taxes are not so high on your homes and rents.
Paula, you've taken a lot of my conversation from me, but that's fine. Look, when I was last in council, I did help put some of the policies in, most of the policies in, that enabled my council to start the process, and this last council to keep us on the straight and narrow. And again, I think Gary Sullivan's in the audience someplace, and I want to thank you, Gary, and Paula's on the committee as well, that allowed this council and my policies to lower that tax rate quite efficiently, 25 cents. And there are very, very few ways, if you think what the city of St. John does, to alleviate poverty. So if we can make housing more affordable, it's through the tax system. And I think we've got to consider that. So, and continue that. Paula mentioned that one of my pieces of my platform is to engage the provincial government again on this tax reform. They promised it to my council, and it hasn't come through. And we want it. We should have it. We bear the brunt of industry in this province, but don't get paid properly for it. If that comes down the pipe, and I hope it does, there is another reduction to your cost of living through property taxes. That's what we've got to do. We've also got to encourage economic development. If we've got a tax base, a tax load, we've got to share that burden more efficiently. And the only way you're going to do that is to bring more industry in, to bring more jobs in, to collect more taxes, and again, share the burden more efficiently. So that's what I would do. Lower your tax rate again. We're on the right road. Economic development, attract industry, so they share the burden with us.
Okay, for me, it's three things I think we should focus on to take the burden off of those in our community. Paul has touched on one of them, and that's lowering the property tax rate. And that she mentioned in March of 28, we get that $10 million payment that we've been making to the inside and outside workers' pension fund. That obligation terminates in 2028. And that $10 million can go a long ways in lowering our property tax rate. And should we get that industrial tax money that, again, Paula mentioned, we can even take it a little bit further. The second point is focus on economic development. By focusing on economic development, we expand our tax base, and that gives us increased flexibility to once again go back to lowering property taxes or the property tax rate. It also creates jobs. If you want to help someone up, you give them a good paying job. You give them a better job. The third thing is affordable housing. A lot of young families today are struggling just to get into the housing market. We have to focus on ways of coming up with affordable housing, and I mentioned it in one of the last questions, and that's to use some of the city land that we have. We can use that because the purchase of land is one of the more expensive ingredients, if you will, to building new houses, so we can offset the housing costs by using the city land to help our young people out. So affordable housing, I think, is one of the big things that we should be doing to help our youth and all across our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we're all on the same page here. we need a really extensive provincial tax reform, and we should be going after that from the municipal right up from us in the municipal right up to the provincial and federal government. So that's one thing I would really push for would be an aggressive tax reform, going after that industrial tax. I don't know that we kind of stopped that a few years ago when somebody said, no, you got what you got, and that's going to be it. But I think if the right people, the right committee would go after that industrial tax, I don't think that's a dead issue. The other thing I would do would be give these folks that are working a living wage. Our living wage right now, if anybody knew, it's 24 and change. How many people are making minimum wage, right? So we need to go after the provincial and federal governments for a living wage. If they had a living wage, we could afford those housing units. Thank you.
Let's turn now to the realities of Ward 4. Its size, its lower population density, and the opportunities and pressures that come with that. Ward 4 includes large areas of land and major industrial sites and is often part of conversations about future development. My question is, what principles would guide your approach to development in this ward?
So I didn't get a chance to say this in my opening, but one of the other things that I do sit on is the Planning Advisory Committee. So I am on my third year for that. And one of the things I've learned in those 3 years is all about zoning. And we've been pushing for the years that I've been on here is new development, and we've been developing all over the city, and I think we need to do that because that's going to still increase our tax base. With that, and especially in Ward 4, we need to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place. And I know this is an issue right now in Lakewood, where they're looking at 270 homes, where the city approved 30 homes. And that's all they approved because the infrastructure isn't there to go after more than 30 homes. So that was brought up at PAC, moved over to council and passed at council. So those two things: continue to aggressively build. That's where we're going to increase our tax base. And making sure that when we build, it's a responsible, smart build, that we have the infrastructure in place, and not having to start a new infrastructure, because that's going to cost a lot of money as well. So those are the things that I would look at.
From my perspective, it's all about responsible development and not aggressive development. We've been aggressive for the last few years, and as a result of that, we have over-construction, in my opinion, in relation to the infrastructure development. So now we have a gap. So housing development has been expanding at an incredible rate, but we have not kept up with the infrastructure. And as a result, for those of us who now live in East St. John, and I suspect many of you here do, the character of our communities are shifting because of those low-rise apartment buildings that we see up and down Loch Lomond Road. The character of our communities are shifting because of the number of new builds that are happening in our communities and the flow of traffic that now runs down to Loch Lomond Road. And the character is shifting again because of that traffic flow on Loch Lomond Road. When you go to work in the morning, you could fairly much got to time it to the minute, or you're going to be late for work. So the infrastructure lag is what has to be addressed right now. We have to close that gap. And until we close that gap, we got to moderate the rate at which we are constructing new homes. And we got to look at ingress routes to these communities, like Lakewood Heights, like Lakewood. We just can't have everyone pouring onto Loch Lomond Road and expect everything to work the way it has in the past. If we don't do major infrastructure development in the east side, look out 5 years, look out 10 years, and imagine what the traffic is going to look like if we keep developing at the rate we're developing. So it's not about aggressive development in East St. John. It's about smart development, and it's about catching up with the infrastructure and putting focus on infrastructure for the next 5 years. So let's slow down the development. Let's maintain the character of our communities. let's be smart about where we put the apartment buildings, and let's put the emphasis on our roads and the infrastructure so that we can have a better quality of life out here in East St. John.
I echo what Paul just said about maybe moving a little too fast and our infrastructure not keeping up with it. You know, we have the most roads in any ward in the city of St. John. They're in Ward 4. And they're traveled, I can argue, they're traveled by the most heavy industry, coming and going from the refinery, coming and going in back of Lattimore Lake, which is, the road is just a mess. So what I want to lobby for is more than our 1/4, 4 wards in the city, share of the pavement fund that happens every year. I don't think we've ever gotten our fair share of that. There is an infrastructure deficit there. And let me talk to you just about one more deficit I think we have in the city of St. John in Ward 4. We have a recreational infrastructure deficit in this city. We've got a deficit for rinks, for ball fields, for play fields, community centers, and the poverty rate in our ward is about 15%. But we see those things I just mentioned going to other areas in the city. We haven't had a new rink in this city since Harbor Station, and we haven't had a new rink in Ward 4 in a very long time. Now I know it's on the books, but I want to make it happen. We in the ward deserve what we haven't seen here in a very long time. So we have infrastructure deficit, recreational deficit. Let's work towards fixing that. Thank you.
So, you know, it's always hard to balance, right? So when it comes to growth, you need to have smart growth, and you do need to have those investments. And that's where I kind of boil back down to having a plan for East St. John. If there is a plan, then there's a plan for investments in East St. John as well, right? One thing that I worked really hard on, and thankfully to staff, there was a few people that really pushed as well, is to have the overlay program come back. That was canceled a few years before we got in office in 21, and you know, I think we're really behind on roads because of that. We ended up paving 10 extra roads last year with that overlay program. So, you know, I think some more investments there would be a great idea. The big thing is too is, you know, so I have absolutely supported, you know, some development around the city. We need to have development. We need to have smart development though. When it came to having projects like 1429 Loch Lomond, that was so close to homes and so like really taking advantage of that small piece of property to compact some buildings. I was not comfortable with that. Now I respect it was council's decision to go ahead and approve it, but I did have a problem with that, so I did vote that down 3 times. But you know, there's other projects that I think definitely can work in the community. You do need to have mixed neighborhoods. The big thing is how do you get more money in the city? You get more money through growth. So if you're not growing your neighborhoods smartly, you do have to do it in a smart way, and you do need to have mixed neighborhoods, but you need the investments to go to, like your splash pads, which is now coming in 2029. In 2030, the res is getting bathrooms and changing rooms. You know, these are investments that the community deserves as well. You know, cricket field coming out here, and hopefully the expansion happening right here in the field house.
On the subject of development, let's make this a bit more concrete. Using something like the proposed data center in Lornville as an example, what specific factors would you look at to decide whether to support or oppose it?
Yeah, I think the big one is you got to look at benefits to the community. Any large project that we consider in St. John isn't necessarily the right project for our city. So it's about embracing smart development, smart projects considering carefully what the local benefits will be from that project. Does it create jobs for the local community? Does it bring in income or revenue for the local community? If it does, then we go to the next step. The next step, in my opinion, would be looking at it from an environmental perspective. Does it match the ecosystems that we would expect of those standards? Does it meet environmental impact assessments? So you got to look at it from an environmental perspective. What will be the impact on the community, people living around whatever the project might be that's coming to the city? How does it fit within the community? Again, does it change the characteristics of that community? So I think there's 3 or 4 things that we have to consider from that angle. So again, it's benefit to the community, the environmental impact that you have to consider, and then it's how does it fit in terms of the aesthetics of the community, and where do you place it?
Looking at any development in the city, we need a ton of data, and it needs to be in front of council before you can make your mind up. We do need to know the benefits to the city. We need to know that investment of $1 has a return. And I think that's important. We need to know that investment dollar has a social return. And without those things in front of council, without them, no one can make up a proper decision. After a decision's made, then send it through its process. If it needs to go to environment, send it to environment. If it doesn't pass, it's dead. Otherwise, we've done our job. And in order for your council to do your job properly, bring us the facts, bring us the data, and I think we'd make an informed decision. That's what I tried to do. But there has to be spin-offs. There has to be something for the city. There has to be a payback. We can't invest time nor money, your money, without something in return, and that's what I'd look for.
Thank you. So, great question, Randy, because it's definitely, there's a lot of conversation happening on the data centers, Spruce Lake Industrial Park, that our council unanimously voted for. There's many things that you look at. First of all, you do make sure that you have open public engagement. One thing that I will tell you is that I've probably spent, so our packet that night for the public hearing is 1,100 pages. I personally probably spent about 50 hours of doing research, answering hundreds of emails, answering phone calls, and you're just really listening, right? That's all you're doing. You're going in open-minded to a public hearing to listen. And then you're getting a whole bunch of information. Council voted on the zoning, which could include a data center, okay? You know, you look at everything. How is that area developed currently? What's there? How far away would this be from a community? What sort of, you know, benefits would there be? What sort of risks could there be? All of these sort of things. Environmental is a consideration. However, we do know that there are 3 heavy layers that any big business like that would have to go through at the provincial level. So that is going to be scrutinized and scrutinized and scrutinized. So for me, in having conversations, I know that that parcel of land can actually hold 20 big businesses. I'm also somebody, I hate to say, I graduated 96 from St. John High. I'm very proud St. John High grad, but I'm ready to have my 30-year reunion, and we don't know if we should have one. Why? Because there's nobody here anymore. There's hardly any of my graduates here. Why is that? Because they went out west for work. I would love to see our graduating class come back because their parents are aging. They want to be close to home. They want opportunity, and I want us to be able to keep our young people here. So that's certainly part of it, but you certainly have to keep in mind of what is in the area, what is the benefit, and there needs to be social benefit as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. We need the data for sure. And I know we're getting into the Lorneville Data Center. Is that the right spot for the data center in St. John? I'm going to tell you what, I don't want it out east. and I don't want it out in Laurinville either. With the project that they're talking about, it's going to use up a ton of water. We already have droughts. We've had droughts in the last 3 years in St. John. So using all the water, using all the power, the noise pollution that it's going to bring. So no, I don't want it in my backyard, and I wouldn't expect anybody to be in their backyard either. So the data has got to be, I know it's council passed it, it's up to the province now. It can still come, but would I want it in my backyard? Absolutely not.
This is less about specific projects and more about how you would make decisions. In a larger, lower density ward like this, infrastructure and services can be more costly and more spread out. How should that reality be reflected in the city's priorities and budget decisions? In other words, how do you make decisions when you can't do everything?
You will have to say no a lot of times in your term on council. There's just not the budget to do everything. Although I mentioned earlier, I believe with the amount of roads in Ward 4, we do not get our fair share of asphalt. And we haven't got our fair share of recreation for years. I'm going to push for that. But the question boils down to pretty simple to me. You are going to have to say no. You're going to have to put it through council, through staff, and at that point, we can't do it all. It is going to have to be budgeted out. What I sincerely hope happens wherever they put down infrastructure, pavement, so on and so forth, that the left hand talks to the right. So if water and sewage needs to be done, let's do it before we pave the road, so we don't do it afterwards. I've seen that done so much. But yeah, you are going to have to say no as a councillor in your 4-year term.
So I said something a little different in a couple council meetings ago, because Ward 4 is very different. I think the West Side has similar challenges. Like we have more rural areas out past Loch Lomond. In Redhead is not as dense as well, right? And then there's challenges there. Some people are not on city water, right? They're not having sidewalks on their streets. They're not getting all these fancy playgrounds like Uptown St. John is getting. And David's right, we're not getting all of our roads resurfaces like Uptown St. John because the development was pushed there. So I came out with something and said, you know what, if the service level is going to remain different, then maybe it should be the same as Fredericton. Fredericton has, I think, 3 different tax rates. So if we're not going to get creative and find ways to provide more service to somebody who's out by the airport or out in Redhead that doesn't even have a flex bus service, which I've been advocating for 5 years, then maybe they shouldn't be paying as high of a tax rate as Uptown St. John. How's that for apples? I mean, I know it just doesn't feel fair. I know it costs more money to send out a police car to the airport. I know all of that, and I've heard it all from city staff. And that's fine, I get that, but at the same time, you're paying the same tax rate. Some people are paying $7,000 in property tax a year for their home, and yet don't feel like they're getting half the service that Uptown St. John is getting. We need the density, but you know, we need to balance this. So get creative or cut the taxes.
Thank you. This is a great example of city council working together as a team, because not one person can make all these decisions. This is a team approach. So when decisions have to be made, it's talked about through the whole council. It's recommended through city staff, and then we bring it to council, and council makes the decision. But it has to be a team approach. Not one person can make these decisions by themselves. And David's right. Sometimes you have to say no. There's no, I've been asking everybody, I'm trying to find that magical money tree. I can't find it. So you're going to have to pick and choose the big priorities. And they're also right. I've been living out east for almost 40 years, and I don't feel East St. John gets their fair share. But as a team approach around the council chambers, those decisions are going to have to be made with the team. So those are the things that I would look for working as a team.
Thank you. I think I would approach it just a little bit differently than you heard here tonight. When it comes to establishing priorities, they're not my priorities, they're your priorities. And so I have to listen to the community that I'm representing if I'm elected to be your councillor. I've knocked on about 4,000 doors in the last 3 weeks, and I've had engagement at about 25% of those doors. And what you're telling me is your priorities. And your priorities today is to lower your tax rate, to fix the roads, to fix the infrastructure, and put attention on parks, recreation, and common spaces. This is what you guys told me. So if you elect me to city council, they will be my priorities until you tell me differently. We're not going to have money to do everything, and you guys know that. Anyone in this room here tonight knows that there are going to be stuff that we're not going to be able to get to. But what we can get to is what you tell me to get to. It's that simple. So if you elect me to be your councillor, I will strive to lower your tax rate. I will work to get your roads fixed, and I will work to get the parks and recreation, the common spaces built. If you tell me they're no longer your priorities, I will adjust. It's that simple. Thank you.
I'm ready.
Well, we're hearing clearly from residents in this ward and from the folks here at the table tonight that road conditions and maintenance are a major concern. So the question directly is, what would you do to improve the conditions of roads in Ward 4, and how would you prioritize that work?
Thank you, Randy. I've been working at it. So, you know, there's some roads that didn't even seem to be on the list. Let me be honest. The Redhead Road didn't, I was like, where is it on the list? Well, probably be a while. Well, guess what? Part of it's getting done this year. The Glen Road. Oh, no, we don't want to do the Glen Road. Like, well, have you been down the Glen Road? You know, we went down with a city car, and the manager said, I said, you know, I think you should pick up your speed. You're going like 20 kilometers an hour. And he said, you want me to pick up my speed? I said, no, you'll rip the bottom out of this car. The roads need to get done, and residents want their roads looked after, and they want them plowed. It's not just about maintenance, it's about plowing. We heard about the winter maintenance plan today. There was an assessment done, and there's a lot of challenges in there. And let me tell you, we have a new CAO in town, and he is going to be doing continuous improvement, continuous improvement, continuous improvement. And staff need to be on board because performance management's happening. It doesn't sound shiny, but let me tell you, when you have performance management and you're assessing and you're having all of these indicators that people need to meet this goal, and if they don't meet it, why? Okay, then let's shift. And if they don't meet it again, why? Is it equipment? Is it the people? Is it training? And then you get closer to your goals. So I think that that's essentially where this council, the next council, is probably going to be moving with the city staff to get more and more things done. But there's a whole lot of roads on this list, but that overlay program is back in play, and we just need to keep pushing for it.
Yeah, as I said before, in Ward 4 we have more roads than any other road in the city, and I don't believe we're getting our fair share of pavement on it. But I said that if you're going to do that, sometimes you're going to have to say no to this and that. So what I believe we have to do is shift or rework your budget. I think, again, like Mr. Dempsey, I've done a ton of doors. What we're hearing at the door is roads, roads, roads. So if that's what you want, that's what I'm going to lobby for, and something else is going to have to be left by the wayside. But I believe it's important. And again, I say to you, please, and I know there's a new CAO in town, but I hope that we don't continue to see us paving a road and then we see water and sewage infrastructure fail after that. And you're just digging up that road again. It's not only frustrating, it's very costly. So roads, 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 I'm going to lobby for you. Thank you.
Look, guys, I think the question was, what are your priorities and how would you tackle the roads? I think it's common sense. What's the road that you all use the most out here in the east? It's probably Loch Lomond Road. So you have to prioritize the roads that we drive on the most, that is the most heavily used. So I would want to prioritize the roads like Loch Lomond, like Glen Falls, like perhaps the Redhead Road for that community out there. So it's about establishing the priorities for the roads that we're all using and that are most common to all of our journeys. That Loch Lomond Road needs a lot of work. I've driven it now a number of years, and we all know it was a country cottage road when it was 50 years ago, and today it's still a country cottage road, but the population has, tenfold on it, all those communities running in. So for me, it's easy. We need to prioritize on Loch Lomond Road, and then we have to look at new ingress routes to all of those communities like Lakewood Heights, and maybe it's another arterial road cutting across the top of our city between, let's say, Lakewood Heights and over the top into Glen Falls out to the highway. Maybe it's having connectors to Heatherway. Maybe it's redoing Lattimore Lake Road so that we can move traffic off Loch Lomond Road as we're coming in so that people that want to go in different directions don't have to come all the way into McAllister. So it's about looking, I guess, from a bird's eye view of the situation, see where people want to go and how can we best connect the traffic into and off of Loch Lomond Road such that we can move our traffic more efficiently and get you guys to work to wherever you want to get to quicker. So, it's about prioritizing and looking at alternative routes and building those routes to lessen the traffic on Loch Lomond Road. Thank you.
Yeah, roads are definitely number one. You don't have to tell me. I drive around on them. That's my job. I can probably tell you where every pothole is, and I'm darn close to being able to tell you where every traffic calming place is as well. Once in a while they sneak up on me. So I think we just need to be smart. We got to stop doing it 3 times. So let's pick a road, and whatever our budget is, let's fix it right the first time, which means fixing the infrastructure underneath. So yes, we are the oldest incorporated city in Canada. We also, that gives us the most oldest infrastructure underneath as well. So when we're doing a road, instead of band-aiding it by just putting a little piece of asphalt on top of it, let's dig it up, let's do all the infrastructure underneath at the same time, so we do it one time and one time only, not 3 times. You do it 3 times, can you imagine the amount of money that we're wasting when we do it 3 times? And David just mentioned, let's stop digging it up after we've paved it. We need to fix those all at the same time. So I think we need to be smart and stop doing it 3 times.
Well, let's stay with this. Do you think residents in this ward are getting fair value for their property taxes? And if not, what would you change?
So that comes back to tax reform again. Now I live on, keeping with roads, I live on a level 4 road, so I get it plowed pretty much the last person when it comes to storms. I still have to get to work. I don't get a sick day for snow. So I would say that we need to do a better job at getting those roads maintained and plowed and taken care of. Are we getting our fair share as taxes? No, and I do live on the eastern side of East St. John, so closer to the airport, and I know the tax rate that I pay, and I know the amenities that I get. I don't have sidewalks. In fact, when I get onto Loch Lomond Road, there's not a sidewalk until halfway down. I don't have a bike lane. I just said to my wife on the way in here, we were talking about bike lanes. I said, I'd love to have a bike lane here. I don't need the big concrete barriers on the bike lanes, but I'd love to have a bike lane or a sidewalk. I don't have playgrounds. I don't have street lights. I get last plowing where I live. There's no lighting. So are we getting our fair share? I'm going to say no. Full stop, no.
I'll build on that. Hell no. No, you can't say it any stronger. Look, I'm a military man. I lived across the country. I lived in other countries. We have the highest tax rate here in St. John in the province, and I think the second highest in the country. How can that be fair? It's not fair. Full stop. We got to lower the taxes. We got to have a tax rate that's at least comparable to Moncton, Fredericton, and Quispam-Sis, and then we can start having the question about are we having, are we getting services for what we're paying? And to answer that question, are we getting the services for what we're paying? Go down to the res. There's porta potties there. Come on, folks. This is a public space, and we haven't even got public washrooms in one of our facilities. Drive the roads anywhere in this ward. There's not a good road in the ward other than perhaps Rossay Avenue because they just did it recently, but otherwise the roads are poor. Look at the recreations and the parks writ large. We haven't had a new ice arena, as Dave has mentioned, in a very long time here out in East. We need the expansion here at the field house. That would be a good head start. There are so much more I could go on with. I've been around Glen Falls and playgrounds that they used to have up off Heatherway. Playgrounds that they used to have are in disarray. They've just taken them down. So services that we used to enjoy, playgrounds that we used to have in our neighborhoods are gone. So, what's going on? So I say it's hell no. We're not getting the value for what we're paying. It's got to come down. And the services have got to come up. And the only way that's going to happen, hear me out in this one, the only way it's going to happen is we push economic growth. We have to grow that tax base. Once we grow the tax base and we get more revenue, we can then start looking at the services that we all believe that we need. Until then, it's not going to happen. So let's grow the tax base.
No, I don't think I've already said it. I don't think we get our fair share. Our roads in East St. John are used for people coming in town to work at the refinery and so on. You can see the traffic on Loch Lomond Road in the morning in Lattimore Lake. You can see that we don't have sidewalks on a good portion of Loch Lomond Road. We don't have sidewalks on a good portion of Redhead Road. We don't have sidewalks on the good portion of Lattimore Lake Road, although there's schools in all those areas. When I was last in council, I was a little aghast at the amount of community centers that we've lost. They're just not there. There's no place for these folks to meet. They're great people, but unless you've got a meeting place, there's none to meet. That's why, again, I think we've got a recreational deficit as well. And if we get a couple of rinks down here, I want dedicated community center space for these people in Forest Hill and Champlain Heights and Lakewood and Glen Falls. So no, we're not getting enough. I believe, I was just trying to check my notes, I believe Ward 4, it's in its entirety, pays more property tax than any other ward in the city. Now, hold that with a grain of salt, please. But if we don't, it'd be one of the highest, and we don't see it getting returned to us, and it's got to. And as Mr. Dempsey said again, I couldn't agree more. Two ways around it. If I want it, okay, I want a bigger piece of the pie, but let's make the pie larger as well. That's economic development. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This is a great question. Do you get your fair share out of your tax dollars? No. Have you gotten a little bit more? Yes. So I'm going to tell you some positive, and I'll give you a little doom and gloom too, because it's just the reality of things. First of all, St. John doesn't get its fair share of taxes. I already talked about that, right? We need to have the province giving us tax reform. It's got to happen. It's been 10 years of council pushing for it, and it's still not here. But I have faith that it'll happen, you know, probably in about 3 years' time. I think that, you know, people need to keep in mind that part of the problem, because we haven't had our fair share, the city now has a $500 million, yes, I'm serious, $500 million infrastructure deficit. And that is creating massive challenges. And that's part of the reason why we're not getting our fair share in our taxes. Now, on to some good things. I know it's not a debate, but there's a couple things that I just want to clear up. We don't have the highest tax rate anymore in the province. We have the fourth highest, but we were the highest. But since we've driven down the tax rate, it is lower now, but it used to be like that. We also do have a little more recreation that has happened in the ward. Forest Hills during my term did get a new playground upgrade, and a volleyball court is now out at the res. And then, of course, there are things on the docket. Is it enough? No, absolutely not. There are roads getting paved and such, and you know, but the greatest thing that I can say coming is this thought with the new CAO and deputy CAO. And the thought is for the city of St. John to be a high-performing organization. And with that, you're going to see much better return on your tax rate.
In a ward like this, many residents rely on a car, but not everybody has that option. Are you satisfied with the current level of bus service in St. John? And if not, what would you change?
The short answer is no. I'm not satisfied with the level of bus service in St. John and St. John East. I was out canvassing in Redhead recently, and that is one of the issues that concern them, is not having bus services in a part of our ward, and for them getting back and forth. I also would like to see our buses move more into the green space. You know, the technology is there. We're doing it smartly, and we're doing it incrementally, and I know some changes have happened, but we have more space to go on that as well. Accessibility into our buses is always going to be first and foremost, and a lot of our bus stops don't have proper shelters, so we got to consider it from that perspective. So when people are out waiting for the bus, they're waiting. You know, we live in a winter semi-Arctic climate. Not as cold as other places in Canada, but nevertheless, it's still pretty cold. So we got to make sure there's shelters there for them. Accessibility is an issue, getting to those shelters, so having the sidewalks that lead to the bus shelters and extending those services. So they're the 3 or 4 things that I think we should look at from a bus service perspective. Thank you.
What I'd like to see done with the bus service in East St. John and the city in general is that I do like the flex bus, and I think the service could be improved. What I'd like to see, and I would vote for something this almost immediately, because I don't think it would be a lot more money, is the shorter wait times and longer hours. I think about the folks that work in the retail jobs in the malls and so on, and the malls close at 9 o'clock or 9:30, and the bus only goes to 6:30. So there's a disconnect there, this disconnect gap, then we need to fix that. As far as other routes and so on, again, we've talked about budgets earlier. We've talked about if you want to spend it here, you've got to take it from there. There's only so much money, and everyone's agreed, okay, they want pavement and they want lower tax rates. You're not going to fall from the sky. Make your mind up what you want. So as far as new routes are concerned, I would vote in favor of doing some trial routes to see if there is a need. Put data in front of the Transit Commission. I'm not going to micromanage their job. Look at the hot spots. See if a bus could be used out there, and we'll go from there. But again, all of these things can't be done immediately. And although we'd like improvement in every facet of this city's business, not going to happen tomorrow. I told you earlier, a good councillor is going to say no to you more than once in his term.
Thank you. So I guess that, or my term, yeah. And I've certainly said no. Absolutely. So we do need better bus service, but I will tell you, I'll share something with you. So when I first got in office, there was 5 new councillors, and 4 of us, we just wanted to hit the ground running. And I came out and said, I've got so many things that I don't even know how to get all this organized in my mind and what to go after first. Keep in mind, this was COVID, so the bus service was slashed. People could not get to work. So what we thought was, you know what, I think we need to focus in on transit because people can't get to work. I'm hearing all the time that people can't get to their jobs or to school easily and all those things. So Councillor Killen put a motion on the floor for us to invest $600,000 from our reserves into transit. Oh my gosh, 45 minutes of debate later, we ended up getting approved for, the council said yes, and $600,000 it was to get the on-demand service and try to get the CAD AVL and to get transit moving again. And guess what? Did we have to use the reserves? No, we got $1.3 million from the feds invested in electric buses and all those short buses that we're using for the flex service for on-demand. It's wonderful. The other thing that I will tell you is I've been sitting on the St. John Ability Advisory Committee for over 2 years, and we do have accessible transit. Accessible transit goes all over the city. It is stop to stop, and you know, it is something that has improved, and on-demand is coming to accessible transit. This has been a $75,000 investment that was recently made, and it's going to save lives. It absolutely sometimes takes 3 weeks right now to book accessible transit to go to a doctor, and so we are definitely going to make things much easier for the disability community.
Thank you. Bus services, yeah, you know, if we're going to increase bus services and bus routes, we need data. You just can't say, okay, we need a bus route here, we need a bus route there, because we all know transit doesn't make money. It costs money. It's a necessity for every municipality. So it's a cost. It's a cost versus user for sure. So we need data for that. Not opposed to trying new things like the Redhead. I think they tried it before, and I think the users, I think it was down, so they cut that out. But that was 5-10 years ago. So let's try it again. Absolutely. I'm all about people getting to work, people getting to appointments, people getting to the hospitals. So those are essential services that we need to make sure that we have. So let's get the data on those. And Paul brought up a great point about safer with lighting bus stops for people. I had one lady reach out not long ago to talk about she's taking her kids to daycare and she has to walk 10 minutes down the road on a busy section to wait for the bus with no shelter. So those are the things that we really need to put some money into as well. So those two things, data and safer bus stops and shelters. Yeah.
We've touched on recreation, and we know that Ward 4 includes parks and trails and open spaces, and that they're important for quality of life. what role should recreation and public places play in the future of this ward, and what would you prioritize?
Recreation should play a major role in this ward. Again, I'll say to you, we've had a recreational deficit in Ward 4 for years. We have fields that need replacement. We have rinks that I hope we get one here built. And aside to, I believe we've got a goodly portion of the funds the City of St. John would put into a new rink in reserves now. That's a wonderful thing. We don't have to go to the bank for it. So we are ready. I think we need to harangue our friends at the provincial and federal side. But a rink should be here. I can't tell you how much that some of the communities miss their community spaces and what went on there that's no longer able to go on there. So it's Girl Guides, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, that type of thing. No place to meet anymore. This facility does something with seniors, but I was down here a week or so ago, and the small room was packed, and they can use it one day a week. And it held 15, 20 people. Other than that, there's no place for a senior to go to meet. So we're not talking about all about ball fields and hockey. We're talking about those community spaces that mean so much, that gel a community, and they're so important. Whether it's your yoga, whether it's your seniors playing cards or crib, that's what we've been lacking in the 5 years that I've gone. It's gotten worse, and that's where the deficit is. That's where I will lobby for Ward 4 to obtain those things.
So there's been a lot of focus on densifying Uptown St. John, and now there's a plan for the North End. And we do need a plan for the east side. And that is where the city ends up saying, okay, where are we going to put these investments? And that's where you start getting your investments into recreation. I've certainly supported the field house expansion. It's actually 2 rinks. We would end up moving the east side library here. And as for the agreements, what I really want to see is pushing for that community space. They do want to have an area in here for music and art, so that it's a center for people to use. But having that community space available so that it's free is essential. I have supported the Lattimore Lake. Shout out to the Lattimore Lake Community Center. It was amazing seeing the work that the residents put into getting this center open. We have a small little bundle of cash now that's available in supporting communities. And so, I went out and got council approval, and we purchased over 50 chairs for there and got some picnic tables out there, and the community is able to use the space, right? St. John Energy ended up donating $30,000 of heat pumps for out there. Very, very important to have these community spaces. I know Redhead and Glen Falls are hoping to have their playground areas upgraded. It's very important. We have a new volleyball court out at the Res. The Res is well used. We need to keep putting money into the Res, but let me tell you, this space has gone from being like a $30 million upgrade to 70. Council saved about $15 million. But 70 million is a lot of cash. We've got applications in, so we'll see how it goes. But I'm certainly going to support this. And I've been supporting as well the Simons Field, turf field, trying to help them get things going.
What does the role of recreation play? Huge. I grew up with recreation. That kept me out of trouble. I played every sport going. We want to keep our kids from playing inside on Xboxes and PS5s and things. We need to increase our recreation. Absolutely. How about bike lanes? People want bike lanes. How about we connect them through each community? doesn't have to be on the main road. Just connect them through the community, Lakewood to Forest Hills and whatnot. I definitely support the field house upgrades. Absolutely. I think we need some arenas. We are lacking. We have one here in East St. John. We don't have any ice time. We have to go to Quispamsis and Rossi. So we do absolutely need these rinks around around the East St. John. We're talking about the res, and we're talking about all the upgrades. Yet we can't get a washroom to 2030. Are you kidding me right now? 2030? It's 2026. That's 4 years without a washroom. That's 4 years without it being accessible. An accessible washroom. If we're going to spend $70 million on a facility like the res, let's upgrade at least the washroom and make it accessible. So absolutely, recreation, I'm pretty passionate about recreation, as you can see. So I would spend money definitely in recreation and support that. Thank you.
Yeah, ditto to what everyone else has said. We need recreation as quality of life. It's how we stay active. But let me ask you a question, but please don't answer, just think about it. How many of you people come here to the field house on a regular basis? And if not, why not? There's accessibility, it's the cost for getting here. So we have this wonderful recreational facility in East St. John, and in my opinion, the community underuses it because we can't afford the fees that are being charged for us to come here. So it's not just about building it, it's about making it accessible to each and every one of you. So let me ask you this question, a second question. If taxpayers' money is being used to build this facility, why do I charge you a fee to use it? Right? It's your money that built it. Federal money, provincial money, city money, at the end of the day, it's all tax money. So we're paying to build these facilities, and then we're being charged to use them. We got to think about that, and we got to change that model. Our children, their fitness, their activity level should not be dependent on their parents' salary. The access to this facility over here for seniors, because we have a lack of walking trails in the winter, every senior should have free access to that facility to walk, to maintain their health. Why don't they? So let's think about not just what we have in recreational facilities, but let's think about the access to those facilities and who gets to use them. Is it just the people with money that get to use them? Think about that. Everybody should have the right to use this facility. It should not be dependent on your income, especially our seniors and especially our youth. And you want to talk about passion. I'm passionate about my fitness, but I'm also passionate about your fitness. So let's make these spaces accessible. There you go. Think about that.
We talked earlier about the overall response to homelessness. This is more about how that responsibility is shared. Do you think all parts of the city should share responsibility for things like supportive housing and services? And if so, what would that look like in Ward 4?
We weren't sure who was starting, Randy, and
I'm gonna start
David
the
heard your question. He says, I think it's your start. I think all the wards play a role in trying to have mixed neighborhoods. It's extremely important, and I think that in order for us to actually get affordable housing, we're going to have to really start working with not-for-profits. We need non-market housing, so we need to be investing so that we can get places like the Rose House. Have you guys been in the Rose House? It's amazing. So there needs to be funds given to people that are looking to build without making a profit. And that's how you get deeply affordable units. We can also try to incentivize by either lowering development fees or allowing people to put more units in the buildings. These are some more creative things that some smaller cities use, where when there's bigger cities and there's all kinds of development going up, it's easy to put restrictions in so that they're making sure that there's so many accessible units, more than what the minimums are, right? But it's a little more challenging when you have smaller municipalities, especially like ours. Not every piece of land is developable, right? We have a lot of swamp, a lot of rock. It can be extremely, extremely challenging to build. But it's really important that we have mixed communities, so that, if we don't, then it's going to be hard for us to be able to stay in the neighborhood when we're aging. We want to be able to age in place. So we might want to downsize, and maybe I will end up wanting to move into an apartment not too far away from my house, right? So those are the sort of things, but you can plan neighborhoods that you don't feel like the apartment building is on top of you. There is a way to do that, right? So I think that it needs to be smart growth, smart planning. You need to really be able to plan the way that you're building. Urban planning, there is ways to do this that you can still build and you don't feel like you have a great big apartment building just right over the top of your house. It might be down the street, it might be down the block, but it's still in the neighborhood.
I'll just repeat the question in case maybe it was a bit too fast. I'm trying to get a shared responsibility here, and Ward 4 is part of a larger municipality. Do you think all parts of the city should share responsibility for things like supportive housing and services? And if you do, what would that look like in Ward 4?
We should share all responsibilities for housing, absolutely. What it would look like in Ward 4 would look like it should in the other wards as well. Firstly, to the question, Randy, I've got to say this. Housing is a provincial responsibility. And be very careful how far your municipality, the City of St. John, goes down that road. All right? You may like your neighbor. Do you like him enough to go home tonight and tell him you're going to pave his driveway? Because if it's not our bill, are we going down that road too far? Now, we can help out there. There's no question. All right? We can take vacant and dilapidated buildings and vacant land and incentivize them so that developers can build on them. And as a matter of fact, I think in that regard we should use both the carrot and stick. The carrot is we give them something, and the stick is if they don't do something with their dilapidated building, we tax them at 4 or 5 times the normal rate. That's what we should do. We've got to encourage development on these vacant lots, and we've got to do it gingerly. We don't have a lot of money to throw in that. I don't want to go down a responsible road that it's not our dollar bill. You go down there and it'd be your dollar bill for a long time. I also started, when I was first in council, started the concept of the one-stop shop, and I think that needs, I think we need to continue development, making it a better climate that allows developers to move forward more easily, and one-stop might need a little tweaking, but I think we're all in favor of housing and development. How much the City of St. John wants to put into it, how much, whether it's Ward 4 or the other wards, that's something you want to give real hard thought to before you go down the road with your money. Thank you.
Supportive housing, absolutely. Every ward should be taking responsibility. We're so far away from the old days of ghettos. There's no ghettos anymore, and we don't want 1 or 2 wards bearing all the burden of supportive housing. And how would it look like in East St. John? Well, we're already doing it. We're already, when we're building these big apartment buildings, we are encouraging much more affordable housing than we ever did. That's one of the things we look at the Planning Advisory Committee. One of the first questions that we ask is how many affordable housing units are going to be in there? And I miss Anne because that was one of her favorite questions. How many affordable housing units are you planning on putting in there? That's what it's actually going to look like in all wards, not just East St. John. But absolutely, we all need to take our role in supportive housing.
Yeah, again, I agree with what's been said here. We do have to burden our share for supportive housing. And the question is, how can we help? Well, we are helping in part already. For those who haven't been there, go like at Glen Falls Park, and you can see how a lot of supporting housing is going on there. Go down Heatherway towards Grandview, and you can see the apartments that are going on there. So I believe in part that Ward 4 East St. John is shouldering some of the burden on already. Could we be doing more? Absolutely. And what would that look like? It's about zoning. Dave mentioned about, using vacant land or dilapidated buildings and restoring them. I'm all for affordable housing. And, again, it's about helping nonprofit organizations by perhaps giving them land or leasing them land. And at the same time, perhaps we should put focus on building smaller homes. Not everyone necessarily needs the McMansion, so let's say, a 1,200 square foot home, a 900 square foot home, whatever size is most appropriate from an affordability perspective. I think we could focus on that. And I don't think the city has to necessarily foot the bill. It's about prioritizing. So when we know there's projects that are aimed at affordability, we as a city would prioritize those projects against other projects to move them along faster. So yes, we have to build homes for the demand for the community. Some people want a more expensive home, but we also need affordable homes, and the affordable homes should be the ones that we prioritize in terms of getting the permits. And speaking of permits, perhaps we reduce the fees for permits when it comes to affordable homes. I guess I'm the last one.
That was the last one. What's one thing the city is doing now that it should stop doing? Can I try that one again?
Sure. What was
Yeah,
that?
what's one thing that the city is doing now that it should stop doing?
One thing the city is doing that they should stop doing. I would say red taping all the building permits. I think that needs to happen much quicker. I think we take way too much time to allow people to come to the process, which starts at the Planning Advisory Committee, then goes to council, and it does the 3 readings and all those things. So I think the city really doesn't do a really good job at the red tape when people want to develop, and I think that's the one thing that we should stop doing and make that a little easier. And that goes back to the green spaces when we're looking at new land developments for the tiny homes and things. We need to be able to do that much quicker. The homeless is just growing, so those things need to happen a lot faster than they are right now.
The one thing I've noticed when I've been doing my door knocking is the degree of cynicism that's in our community. And I've been asking myself, where does that come from? And I think it comes from the fact that we have a lack of transparency and accountability within the decision-making process in City Hall. I think what we have to do then is be open. We have to stop making decisions behind doors and then coming out and announcing it to the public as if though it's a fait accompli. We have to have the public involved in the decision-making process more so than it is now. So at council, we have to give the time for our citizens to come forward, to express their concerns, to have that dialogue with the councillors so that we get to the point where we have the transparency and the involvement of the community to the point that when decisions are made, the community understands the rationale for the decision and they've had the opportunity to have input into the decision. And when things don't go right, someone has to be held accountable. And sometimes I'm not sure that the accountability factor is where it should be as well. So my issue is what should we be doing that we're not doing now? It's all about transparency and accountability.
So I'm going to sideswipe what Paul said for a moment because I thought the same thing. One of the things we don't do well is we don't communicate well. and whether it's through public forum, I think that's what Paul was getting at, or just the citizens knowing what is available, what isn't available. There are cost-free programs in this facility. You can go and but most people can't find it, and that's what I'm getting at. They don't know where to look for it, so we're not talking to the folks so they better understand the issues. We're not talking to the folks so they better understand what they need to do, where they need to go, what there is to do out there. So we do have a community dashboard, but I think we can better communicate through that in other areas. And also, the second thing I was going to use is I don't believe we're helping our developers move forward fast enough, all right? I've talked to a few, and they say it's arduous at the best. I think it's a priority for me. I mentioned One Stop previously. I did start that program. 2 ladies took it and ran with it and did a wonderful job, but I think maybe it's time we tweak it. Development's so important to the city, so in moving those developers forward and breaking down the barriers is something I think the city could do a little better.
I have good news for all of you, but it's not a debate. I'll share it later. What should the city stop doing? I'll tell you, this rule is to govern. It's, they say you put your nose in and keep your hands off, right? So you're setting the direction. This is the job of council. Unfortunately, sometimes things will come to you and you think, okay, there's something off. There's something wrong. I'll tell you a quick story. I had a gentleman contact me and he says, Paula, I just can't believe it. I've had a request in with the City of St. John for 7 years. 7 years to get a water roll, which I had no idea what that was, at the end of my driveway. I said, okay, first of all, can you tell me what a water roll is? Secondly, do you have a work order number? I mean, it seemed like, how is something that seems very simple, a water roll is basically almost looks like a speed bump, but anyway. How is something so simple, but sounds simple, why did it get lost? This work order had been completed in the system more than halfway through the request. So I did start to chase it because I thought, where is a disconnect? So I sent information off to staff, and there is a bit of a disconnect. So there is definitely some improvements, David, that need to happen through some of the customer service. This is not One Stop's job, but through the customer service and getting the communication up there. So there has been a few instances like that where I really did need to chase some requests, right? So there are some disconnects there, and our council did push, and there's some investments been made in communication. So hopefully, people will know where to put their requests and where to check on them after.
If Ward 4 residents and your constituents felt strongly about something, but you had concerns, how would you approach that decision?
Yeah, I said this earlier tonight. I'm here to represent the community. I'm here to represent you. If I have concerns, I would reach out to the community and talk to you. But at the end of the day, as a councillor, if I get elected, it's not about what Paul Dempsey wants, it's what you want. And so I'm going to represent your views. I'm going to represent your interests. If you tell me that as writ large, if the community's telling me something, I'll listen to it. If there's the loud minority, obviously I'll try and sniff that out as well. But at the end of the day, folks, I'm here to represent your views. I'm here to listen to you, and I'm here to learn from you, and then I'll lead. So it's listen, learn, lead. And that's the approach I will take as a councillor. It sounds simple. My personal concerns will be set aside. I will work with you, I'll listen to you, I'll learn from you, and I'll then lead.
Again, I've done a lot of door-to-door, and I've heard a lot of things, and I've said to you tonight that I will lobby for recreation, I will lobby for streets. But the question is, if I didn't think it was the right thing to do, what would I do? So I'm going to exaggerate for just a second with you, okay? If you want your streets paved in gold, I know it's not going to happen. And I've got to say no. And I've said that to you before tonight. You've got to say no. We have to make responsible decisions using the data that's put in front of us for the good of the city of St. John. And if you're not going to say no once in a while, you shouldn't be sitting up here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy to say no, and I've had to do it too. It is really, really important to stay engaged. So when I ran last time, I promised to do two things: be accessible and to work hard, and I've definitely done both of those. In the meantime, I've said I'll advocate for this. I will advocate for that. Yes, I think there is a need to do that. Lattimore Lake Road, I'll advocate for that. But that's only an advocate. You know, I can advocate until you're blue in the face and you still might not get it. Sadly, you know, I've done that with wanting to get a survey done and some engagement for the Redhead community when it came to getting a bus service, a flex service out there, right? You know, it hasn't happened yet. But you can advocate. You can't promise. You're only one person at the table. And the thing is, you know, the real thing that people don't realize is, yes, you're voted in by your ward, and you absolutely need to listen, and you need to stay engaged, and you need to respond and let people know why you're making the decisions that you are, because you don't have all of the information that council does. So sometimes there could be information that you don't know, and you have to go and make those decisions. You know, I've had some people tell me, you know, I'm not voting for you because you didn't do what I told you to do. Well, that is going to happen. And you are sworn in as a councillor to do what is best for the city of St. John, which the idea of that is that if you do what's best for the whole city, you will do what's best for your residents too. And it's extremely important to keep that in mind, and it's extremely important to keep the ward in mind. I don't want to do anything that is going to cause any issues for the ward, but you do need to grow and you do need to plan well.
Yeah, that's tough because you are a ward councillor and you have to represent our ward, and you also have to represent the city of St. John, so all citizens. And it comes back to the greater good for the greater amount of people. So yes, advocating for our ward has got to be at the top of our list. Taking in all the information, analyzing all the information, getting the team together, the team of councillors, city staff, the mayor, and analyzing all the data and making the decision. And sometimes you are not going to be the most popular person in the room. That's going to happen. But it comes down to the greater good for the greater amount of people.
What's one barrier that prevents residents from participating fully? And what would you do about it? A barrier that's preventing people from participating fully, whether it's accessibility or it could be a host of things, but there's a lot of people aren't participating and aren't engaged. And sometimes it's a barrier that's preventing it, and I'm just wondering if you could identify a barrier, and what would you do about it?
I think we know one of the barrier for all of us sitting here is financial. Financial, that's it. I mean, we just can't do everything. Some of us can do very little. That is a barrier. That's why, again, I need to have those community centers. They're free in Ward 4. We've had them before. We've lost them. They need to come back. The other, when you're talking about barriers, is disability, and if I might speak to disability for a second, we all received a survey, those running for council positions in the last little while, and when I went to do the survey, I noted a stat that said 41% of the citizens of St. John have some sort of disability. And I thought to myself, that is a massive number. And when I thought further, I thought about my own mother, who, at the age of 89, is losing her eyesight and her mobility is very, very poor. I thought that demographic is making that number higher. So what do we need to allow more people to overcome the disability problems we have? When I did the survey, I said, you know, we need to plow the streets more. And it's for me, and it's for you, and it's for Mom. We need to have a few more sidewalks out there, visible and audible. We need to cut the curbs, okay? You know, we talk about potholes for a car, but Mom's got a little walker now with a 4-inch wheel. Not a pothole that stops her. It's something like a hole this big. So that's what holds people back as well, I think, is those simple things that you and I take for granted. And until I did this survey, and until I thought of my mother, I really didn't think hard enough about it as well. So those are the two things I would speak to.
Thank you, David. So first of all, I think some reason I kind of take this back to voting a little bit. If I think about voting, why do people not vote? And I think that the general public thinks, like, why bother? Not everybody. Obviously, you're here, right? People do care. But some people think, you know what, I'm probably going to get much of the same. Same politician just telling me what I want to hear just to get my vote, and then they get in and the phone doesn't get answered, the emails don't get answered, they don't show up to meetings, and they lie. Well, that's absolutely something that you didn't get here. I also knew when to take my hats off. So I do wear other hats. I have a business, and I know to keep my personal stuff away from my council stuff, and vice versa, right? So it's extremely important. So that's one thing I think that keeps people from getting involved in politics. They're tired of it. They're tired of being fed the same thing all the time. I agree, though. There's some things that people want to go and do, and they're not able to do it. And I agree very much with David. 41.6% of people that were surveyed in 2022 have some form of a disability. And I have had residents this year tell me that they couldn't leave their homes. That is unacceptable. There are so many changes, though, that need to be made. Like, it's unbelievable. The curb cuts. Like, every time we're making investments, they need to be done right. Universal design is good for everybody. And somebody once told me that every single person could become part of this minority group. So keep that in your mind when you hear accessibility. Accessible parking, stay out of those accessible parking spaces if you don't need them. You know, I absolutely believe that we are so much better when we're able to all get involved.
I think communication. I don't think we communicate well enough, and people don't know when to get involved. So I think we need to do a better job at communicating what's going on in our cities and things that are going on around town. So communication would be number one, and to hijack the accessibility. I go back to the res waiting 4 more years for accessible washrooms for a facility that is worth $70 million. I can't wrap my head around that. And everybody think that's okay. Oh, it's coming in 2030. That's 4 years from now. So all kinds of things we can do for accessibility, and you heard the panel talk about a lot of them, curb cutting and making sure that when we plow roads, we actually get rid of the big plow rolls off the sidewalks and let the wheelchairs are able to get into these businesses. Why don't we partner with businesses on that? We don't have to bear all the money, but businesses are going to benefit from accessibility as well. Why don't we partner with those? So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, so what's keeping people from participating? In my mind, it's economics. I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about Parks and Recreation. It's how we manage these facilities and how we charge people to use them. I think we got to look at that right from the top and perhaps come up with a different management model than we're using currently and come up with a different fee structure. And we got to make it more accessible, as I said earlier, to those who have less in our community, to our children and to the seniors. So it's about accessibility to parks and recreations. We can enhance, I think, the activity level in these places simply by doing that. The other is those physical and mental disabilities that people within our community suffer from. And there's a lot that we can do to increase accessibility for those with disabilities. And we talked about it earlier about public transportation, parking spaces in facilities like this, accessibility to all public buildings. The list is long and I could go on. But the other barrier that I'd like to discuss is cultural barriers. We know that we're a nation of immigration, and we have people that join us from all parts of our globe. And when they first integrate into our community, there may be some cultural aspects that we might not be considering as a community, but as we embrace new people from different places, I think that's another aspect that we have to consider is what are the cultural barriers and how can we break those down as well. Thank you.
We were in a war the other night, and there were 8 candidates, and I thought, how are we ever going to get through this? And I almost ran out of questions, but I still have questions. But your thoughtful answers have really taken up a great deal of time, and I'm grateful for that. It's time for closing statements. I'll start with Paula at the end, moving forward.
Okay. That's great. How long do we have, Randy? 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Okay, good enough. It's hard to go over everything. And just so you know, my campaign phone number is 506-721-3185. I have not shut my phone off at night. So you can call me morning, afternoon, or evening. And my website is paulaforstjohn.com. Definitely reach out to me if you have anything that you want to discuss, if you have any concerns. I am gathering information right now, and I do plan on sharing it with the new CAO. There's a new guy in town, and there's some big changes coming. First of all, I just want to say there's a lot of people from the ward here. I know there's some people not from the ward, but there's a lot of people from the ward. And first of all, just thank you. It has been the honor, and a great honor to represent you for these 5 years. And I'm not finished. I do have energy to keep doing it. So a couple of my focuses has been actually for this campaign is affordability. So driving down the tax rate, the debt's been cut in half. I absolutely do want to make transit more accessible. Using the data is extremely important though. Public safety. We've been working on public safety, and I did motion for the police commission to have a review. That is supposed to be coming back, I believe, on May the 4th. And I'm ready to make the decisions. So if the decision comes back that to get rid of the police commission, then that's what I will do, but I will be using data to do it. I don't just, make decisions on the fly and then deal with the repercussions after. Also accessibility, I've been working quite closely with the Ability Advisory Committee. We are probably going to be making this a city committee, I think, before the end of the term. After that, their terms of reference will be approved, hopefully, and we're going to get running on a lot of things there. There's been a lot of parking upgrades uptown. We've got a whole load of issues that we've been looking at with transit, accessible transit and such, and there's way too many things to talk about in 2 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Randy, and thank you to HDC for having us tonight. Much appreciated to have a forum to share our thoughts, share our platforms. So that's where I want to start closing remarks. I just want to go over my platform again. So why am I running? Why am I here? Why did I decide to do this again? The first and the cornerstone of my platform would be fiscal and financial responsibility. I'll say it again, take care of the dollar and it will pay dividends, and I plan to do that. I was there when my finance committee, Don Darling, put in 9 policies that helped to lower the tax rate. I know this council has a tremendous job carrying forward with it. It also helped to cut the debt in half, and it helped to put $72 million in reserve funds or savings accounts for the city. Impressive. When I left, we had $18 million in reserve funds. But when I did this, the city was about 235 years old and never had a reserve fund in its life. Think about that. Now, if we get to a point where we've got some federal and provincial money, we will build a rink. We will build a facility for communities, for the community to arrive in. The other part of my platform is economic growth and development, and I don't think we spoke to it enough here, but we've got to attract more business and enterprise to St. John. We need to share that tax burden. We can't do it on our own. We've seen what's happening, and I don't want to beat anyone up here tonight, but we've seen what's happening with the province, okay? Someone's going to come after that money. You go and put a deficit of $1.34 billion. Someone's coming after it. We need to attract business here to share the burden. And the last thing I just speak very briefly to is hands up and back, is I'm very passionate about this recreation deficit in our ward. Rinks, field, community centers. It will just build your city stronger, and they need to come to Ward 4 East St. John. I am ready to work. I'm passionate. I've been at the table. There's no learning curve for me. I'd like to get back there. Thank you very much.
Do you want to save the best for the last? I'll go. Okay, thanks, Phil. We'll save the best for the last. Look, if I get elected, I'm going to put focus on you. I had the good fortune, as I mentioned earlier, of commanding a warship. I led the largest naval school in Canada, which was about 2,000 people, and I led the Pacific Fleet, 3,500 people. And what I learned from those experiences is you look after the people that works for you, you'll be so much further ahead in achieving your mission. You'll be so much further ahead in getting the results that you're after. I said earlier that I'm going to be a results-oriented guy for the city. I want to deliver results for the city. The best way I can do that is to protect your interests and to be concerned for your welfare. So I'm going to approach it from that perspective. What is best for the community? What is best for the people that I'm represented? What do they need to have a better quality of life? I could go through my whole platform again tonight, but I'm not going to put you through that. But I do want to stress just a couple of points. I think it really starts with economic development. We need to draw investment into our city. With that economic development, we will have more jobs and we'll have better paying jobs. That's the best thing you can give a person, is a good job and a good salary. Then they can lift themselves up. So I'll be laser focused on that. It also expands our tax base. By expanding our tax base, we then get the money to do all the things we've been talking about here all night, whether it's park recreation, whether it's our roads, whether it's our infrastructure. We really got to grow the economy. And so what you need at council, I believe, is someone or a team of people who are going to do that on your behalf. So let's grow the economy so we can expand the base, create jobs, and then we have the money, the revenue, to take care of the city and to take care of your interests. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you. Thanks for hosting this. This is wonderful. We're not going to get out to knock on everybody's door, so this really helps. So not one person can fix the city. Not one person can do this by themselves. It takes a team. It takes a team of councillors, of city staff, and a mayor. So that's what I'm really going to focus on. I've been taking care of this community for over 30 years as a paramedic. I've been seeing you at your worst days, and your most vulnerable days, and some of your best days. And I get to share that with you. So I'm ready to take that inside the city council walls. And I said the other night, he said, during times of troubled times, I'm probably the most calmest person in the room because I want to hear the whole story. I take it all in. I ask questions. I listen to what the concerns are. I analyze all those concerns. I make an informed decision with the team, and then we follow up with that. And I'll continue to do that, not only in my career, but in the city council as well. So a few things that I didn't get to say at the very beginning was the number one priority that I was working for was responsible growth, both residential and commercial, and tax reform. Those two things are going to help pay for all the things that we want, the arenas and the roads and all those things. So those are very important. Those would be my two main focuses coming in, is to increase that tax base to pay for all those things. I think the city's not doing a horrible job. They worked very well in the last 5 years at moving St. John forward with Plan SJ, and I got 15 seconds. With Plan SJ and Move SJ, I think they've actually done a pretty good job. I think it needs to be reviewed, and I think that would be number one on our list for City Council. The new council is to review Plan SJ, but not move away from it. So hopefully I've earned enough of your votes tonight and to be able to serve you at the City Council for Ward 4. Thank you.
Well, thank you to all the candidates for your participation this evening and for putting your names forward for public service. Thank you as well to everyone who joined us both here and online. Strong communities depend on informed and engaged residents, and your presence here tonight matters. The Human Development Council and Civic Tech St. John, we are committed to supporting thoughtful, nonpartisan dialogue on the issues that shape our community. We hope tonight's discussion has been helpful to you as you consider your choices in the upcoming election. Which reminds me, the election's on May the 11th. The advance polls are on May 2nd, on May 4th, and we encourage everyone to take the time to vote. Thank you again for being here. Have a good evening. Lovely to meet you. My son's a paramedic. Who's your son? Oh, Tom, that's great. Pete Young. Okay.